Hello, welcome back to Odds Now for the fourth edition of our Premier League betting show here on the YouTube channel. It's myself, Matt Hill, joined by Brad Walker once again to run through the upcoming weekend's 10 Premier League fixtures and pick out our best bets from across the slate. Now, we return after the 2-week international break. And just a little caveat here, we are filming this one earlier in the week due to some annual leave coming up for myself. So it is Tuesday afternoon. So prices may have moved by the time you watch this video. We also are going a little bit light on the team news front at this point of the week. So if we mention a player who's since been ruled out or whatever, you'll know why that is the case. But hopefully all this information will still be relevant by the time you watch this video. Brad, how are you doing? How's your week been? You been enjoying the internationals?
Enjoying it might be a stretch, Matt, but football's football, isn't it? Be looking forward to getting the Premier League back this weekend. I don't know about you.
Yeah, always well. I'm a lower league fan, so I don't the international break. To be honest, the way my team are playing at the moment, Carlisle could do with an international break. I would love a break from them, but unfortunately, it's just relentless losing at the moment. But anyway, that's for another conversation. We're going to dive straight in then. Try to keep it 2 or 3 minutes on each game to keep the show half an hour in total. So we'll see how we get on this week. I'm going to dive in with game one, and this is one for me. Southampton versus Manchester United in the early kickoff. Now, these are two teams who I think will be frustrated with their starts to the new season overall. Saints played quite well on the opening day against Newcastle, but ultimately ended up losing to 10 men. And then they suffered frustrating defeats to Nottingham Forest and Brentford. Two games that maybe not winnable is the right word, but I think they would have marked them down as good chances to get points. So ultimately still pointless coming into game 4, which is never ideal. Their possession stats, despite those 3 defeats, 75%, 65% and 65%, which kind of tells you all you need to know about Russell Martin Southampton. They will keep the ball regardless. And unfortunately, some of the defending, particularly against Brentford, has been absolutely kamikaze stuff. They've been shooting themselves in the foot, received a lot of criticism as a result. But I'm not expecting them to change their style of play. It's how they got promoted out of the Championship. It's kind of what Martin believes in. And I'd be very surprised if they suddenly sit back, especially against a team like Man United, who've had a bit of a shaky start themselves, it's fair to say. Stumbled past Fulham on the opening night, weren't entirely convincing. Then they suffered losses to Brighton and a hammering from Liverpool. I thought the Brighton game could have gone either way, to be fair to them. Joshua Zirkzee missed a late chance, and then Brighton went up the other end. But Liverpool, once again, Brad, trying not to smile as I say this, I'm sure, running riot at Old Trafford. And I think the manner of that victory, it just ratchets up the pressure on Erik ten Hag once again even more, doesn't he? And he just can't seem to catch a break. And I think this is a disaster game for ten Hag, really, because if they win it, he's unlikely to get any praise because it's a Southampton team who have yet to get a point and have looked terrible at the back. But then if they don't win it, he's going to get absolute pelters. So, nothing to be gained from this fixture, a lot to be lost from this fixture. I think it's fair to say you'd be hard pressed to want to be back in Manchester United to win this game at 4-5. That is a skinny price, I think. But I really do think there is a gap in quality between these two teams. So ultimately, I expect that quality to prevail. However, Southampton, despite their poor start, they've still shown a good threat going forward. They had 1.57 expected goals against Brentford, 1.77 against Newcastle. Yes, they had a bad day at the office against Nottingham Forest, but generally they've had a good threat up front. Scored a nice goal last time out as well. So I think the way to play this opening game might be to back Man United to win with both teams scoring. That is 9-4 available with various bookmakers at the time of speaking. On to the 3 o'clocks then. Brad's going to start us off with Brighton versus Ipswich.
Yeah, Matt, both sides come into this match after 1-1 draws before the international break. Of course, Brighton continued their impressive start under Fabian Hurstler, with a point versus Arsenal at the Emirates. Of course, Arsenal were down to 10 men due to that controversial Declan Rice red card. But I think it says a lot about Brighton that they came out of that game disappointed, having not taken all 3 points. I think they had 22 shots to their name across the 90 minutes in London. Nevertheless, the draw still leaves them with 7 points on the first 9 from, I think it's fair to say, with tricky-looking fixtures from the offset, Everton away, Man United at home, as you touched upon there, and then the Arsenal away game. There are some injury concerns, for them to contend with. The likes of James Milner and Joel Veltman and Matt O'Reilly are among those ruled out. They did have a bit of a patchy record at home last season, I think it's fair to say, Brighton, due to a difficult second half of the campaign under Roberto De Zerbi. But the Amex does look as though it's going to be an incredibly difficult place to visit again this term. like you touched upon there, Matt, their only home fixture in the Premier League this season did end in a 2-1 win over Manchester United on match day 2. I think it was a late João Pedro header, which proved to be the winner in that one. Moving on to Ipswich, they picked up their first Premier League point in over 2 decades prior to the international break with a 1-1 home draw with Fulham. It's slightly cliche, but I think home fixtures are always going to be vital for sides looking to remain in the division. So I'm sure they'll be grateful to get off the mark there. They did have a difficult start overall to this season with matches against Liverpool and Manchester City. It's always going to be a big ask. But I'm sure now the pressure is slightly eased. Now they've got a point to their name in their third after 3 games, but they do face another difficult task. I haven't said that at Brighton this weekend. Brighton have averaged 12.33 shots in the Premier League in each match so far. I think they've got a healthy conversion rate of 16% too, which rises to 17% at home from that United game. If you just look at the dearth of talent in attacking areas they've got available to them, the likes of João Pedro, Danny Welbeck, who started well this season, Yankuba Minter, new signing, Karel Matoma, Simon Adingra, a wealth of talent in forward areas for Brighton fans to enjoy, and they face an Ipswich side which are yet to keep a clean sheet in the Premier League. Like, it's understandable given who they've played. But yeah, I'm going to be backing Brighton to win this one comfortably here. I think it'll be incredibly tough to beat them on their home patch again this season, as we've seen in years gone by. So yeah, I'm going to back them to win well. Brighton scored 2.5 plus goals, comes in at 5-4 with live score, and I just think that there are goals up for grabs for them this weekend, particularly given the players they've got in forward areas, and they come against an Ipswich side, like I said, who haven't kept a clean sheet so far this season. So that's where I'll be going for that one, Matt.
Yeah, going to be tough for Ipswich this season. You think defensively, they do appear to have a good attacking threat with the likes of Sammy Szmodics and Liam Delap, both off the mark early, which is going to be important for them. Cheers for that one, Brad. Back to myself then for Crystal Palace versus Leicester, and I talk about Southampton and Man United both making disappointing starts. I think these two will be disappointed as well. They are both at least off the mark, both got points against decent opposition, to be fair. Starting with Palace, they came into the new campaign having finished so impressively under Oliver Glasner, but sadly, they did lose some key players in the summer, particularly Michael Elise and more recently Joachim Andersen at the back. Experienced forward Jordan Ayew also joined this week's opponents, Leicester, ironically. But crucially, they managed to keep hold of Mark Gahey and Eberechi Eze. I did think they were going to lose Mark Gahey at one point. Newcastle tried very, very strongly to get a deal for him over the line, but didn't quite manage it. So all things considered, keeping all of them two and then bringing in the likes of Trevor Chalobah on loan from Chelsea, Eddie Nketiah on a permanent from Arsenal, Ismail Assar. I think Palace are about as strong as they left at the start of the window, all things considered. So I expect them to show signs of improvements in the weeks ahead. Losses to West Ham and Brentford so far this season, they were both tight affairs on the underlying numbers. Bit unlucky to lose them ones, but in the same breath, probably a bit fortunate to get a point off Chelsea last time out, Eze scoring a wonderful goal late in that one. Leicester, meanwhile, well, they received bleak forecasts from many pundits in pre-season, and having snatched a point off Tottenham in their opening game, which was somewhat fortuitous, the last 2 games have seen them perform closer to those negative expectations, sadly. They've lost 2-1 at Fulham and then at home to Aston Villa. Looks like close results on paper, but if you actually watch those games, wasn't all that close. They were outclassed by both. And I think despite scoring in all their games so far, I've been a little bit worried about their attacking threat. They're very reliant on Jamie Vardy, who I think it's fair to say is at the tail end of his wonderful career. And I think Palace look once again to be an opponent that just have a little bit more class all over the pitch than Leicester. So I do expect Palace to prevail here. They were free scoring under Glasner at the back end of last season, but they haven't quite looked that good going forward so far. And I think you can attribute that to a change of personnel. Losing someone like Elise, who was the conductor in that team, he really was the heartbeat of them creatively. I think they're going to be a little bit more reliant on the likes of Eze for individual moments of brilliance in these next few weeks. Mateta's not really got up and firing just yet, but I'm sure he will. All things considered, I want to back Palace. They're very, very short to win this, but if you back them to win with under 3.5 goals, 6-4, that looks like the best way to play this game for me. So that's the bet for me. That's available with Betway at the time of speaking. 6-4, Palace win and under 3.5 goals. Brad, back to you for Fulham versus West Ham.
Yeah, Matt, I just mentioned Fulham's 1-1 draw at Ipswich last time out before the international break. It's been a solid start to the season for Marco Silva's side. They were unlucky not to get something at Old Trafford as you touched upon earlier in the video. They beat Leicester and then taken a point at Portman Road last time out. And West Ham, meanwhile, they suffered a home defeat to champions Manchester City in their last game before the break. They had positive spells during that match, but I don't think they ever really looked capable of getting anything from the game. They have lost 2 of their first 3, but did win at Crystal Palace on match day 2, as you touched upon. Another loss, I think, would put a little bit of pressure on new manager Julian Lopetegui, given the transfer business in the summer. And this fixture wasn't exactly favourable to the Hammers last season. They lost both of their matches 5-0 away at Craven Cottage, which of course is where the game is this weekend. And then they lost 2-0 at home in April. I'm sure they'll be eager to improve on those showings in this match this weekend. Their win at Selhurst Park was only their 3rd win on the road in their last 10, though. I think 10 of West Ham's 14 losses in the league last season came in away fixtures, which again will need to drastically improve if they want to return to Europe next season. From a betting perspective here, I was struggling a little bit to find a way in, but I have found I think a potential route, which is on the corner line. I spoke of Fulham's dominance in this fixture last season, but remarkably, it was West Ham who had more corners in both of those matches. I think they left Craven Cottage and with 6 to their name compared to Fulham's 3, despite losing 5-0. And they also had 8 in their 2-0 loss at the London Stadium back in April. They face a Fulham side who have averaged 6.6 corners conceded so far in the Premier League too. So a bit of a quick one from me on this game. I'm going to be going with West Ham to have over 5.5 plus corners. That comes in at 7-4 with midnight. Like I said, I think it's a bit of a tricky game to find a better angle from. But yeah, that's the best possible way of looking things that I could find for this game, Fulham versus West Ham.
Like it. We've had a bit of joy with the corners already on the show this season as well. So hopefully that can continue there with West Ham away at Fulham. Over to Anfield then, Liverpool taking on Nottingham Forest, and life under Arne Slot couldn't have started any better really for Liverpool fans. Solid wins over Ipswich and Brentford. I guess coming into their game with Manchester United, we didn't really know quite where they were at, but they did really, really well. Put United to the sword 3-0 at Old Trafford. The game, you could say, was a little bit tighter when you look at the XG side of things than the scoreline suggests. However, some of that comes from United having late pressure and really in the key part of the game, those first 60 minutes, Liverpool were a class apart, really, particularly in forward areas. I still think it's fair to say there are question marks over this side. Manchester United have got serious problems, as we all know. They've had them for a long time. So a 3-0 win at Old Trafford probably doesn't hold the same weight than it did a few years ago. I think it's fair to say. But they are still to concede a goal under Slot in the Premier League. They're now a general 9-2 for the title, having gone off as big as 7-1, 15-2 last month. So it was a generous start in terms of their first 2 fixtures, but they've made the most of it. Now, another team that's made their most of a generous set of fixtures is Nottingham Forest, because I think any Forest fan would have taken still being unbeaten at this point of the stage, this season. 5 points so far. A really impressive 1-0 away victory at Southampton, where they dominated proceedings. To be honest, should have been 2-3 or 4-0 even. And then 1-1 draws either side of those. They would have been a little bit frustrated with the 1-1 draw against Wolves last time out, where they were at home and it probably felt like it was a winnable game. But then again, when you're trying to distance yourself from those relegation places, getting points on the board early is absolutely pivotal. And it takes the pressure off for a game like this at Anfield, where really expectations are quite low from a Forest perspective. Remarkably, Forest have now won their last 3 Premier League away games, but let's just caveat that by saying that they came against relegated Sheffield United, relegated Burnley, and relegation favourites Southampton this season. So generally speaking, before that, they were 7 without a win on the road, and they've actually lost 24 of their 39 away fixtures since returning to the Premier League. So pretty dreadful away from home by all accounts. Both visits to Anfield since they came back into the league, unsurprisingly, have ended in defeat, and Mo Salah has been on the score sheet on both occasions. And I think his performance is maybe just going a little bit under the radar so far. Luis Diaz has been the man taking the headlines in terms of the goals, but Salah is just a consistent threat, isn't he? And he still has 2 goals and 2 assists to his name already in the Premier League this season. Him and Erling Haaland do like a tussle between who should be people's fantasy Premier League captains on a weekly basis. And Haaland has been the man so far, hasn't he, with back-to-back hat-tricks. But this feels like the kind of game where Salah might just remind everybody that he's still in there kicking about. And I would not be surprised to see him have a bit of a field day here at Anfield. He's just shy of even money, 10 to 11 to score any time in this fixture, which looks a really solid pick for any kind of weekend multiples for me. Forest shown that they really struggled to keep him quiet in the two previous meetings at Anfield. And then to score 2 as well, which Salah is more than capable of doing, is a very generous 9 to 2. So at home, I'd always be very interested in Mo Salah to have a bit of fun there. So that'll be my 2 players for this game. Going to ping over back to Brad for reigning champions Manchester City, who are at home to Brentford.
Yeah, for a side many who have accused of being on the decline, Matt, City have certainly hit the ground running and without getting out of first gear. I think it's fair to say so far this season. They've won all 3 of their matches, scoring 9 goals in the process and conceding just twice. They've got a remarkable home record too in the Premier League. I think they're unbeaten since November 2022 at the Etihad Stadium, though the last team to beat them there in the league was Brentford. So if that's a positive sign heading into this weekend for Bees fans, it remains to be seen. But Brentford themselves have made a great start to the season, particularly given the shadow of Ivan Toney's future, which was hanging over them, I think, in the opening couple of weeks. He's now vacated, of course, for Saudi, allowing Thomas Frank to focus on the players that he has in front of him. And I think they're very impressive in forward areas even without Toney, with Johan Visser, Kevin Schade, Brian Mbeumo, of course, Igor Thiago as well, who was signed in the summer, who's now injured for the time being. But there's still plenty of goals among those names there. And Mbeumo, of course, got a couple last time out, didn't he, in that game? I think it was against Southampton in a 3-1 home win. I think that makes it 6 points from 9 as well for Brentford. The only loss coming at Anfield on match day 2. Having said all that, getting anything from this weekend remains a tough ask, I think it's fair to say. I struggled to find a betting angle for this one too. City are predictably firm favourites to win at 1 to 5. And yeah, they averaged 2.68 goals scored at home last season, but their home encounters with Brentford do tend to be pretty tight. They only won 1-0 against them at the Etihad last season. They lost 2-1 at home to them the season before that, and then the season before that they won 2-0. So they're reluctant to back them to score a bag load this weekend because of that. I certainly think it's possible given the quality in their ranks, but I'm not sure the value's there at just over 2 to 1, for example, for them to score 3 or more goals. Of course, I expect City to get the 3 points, but given everything I've explained there, I'm going to go for a no bet in this one, Matt, just because I'm not sure. I think City will win, of course I do, but like I said, I'm not sure whether they'll score quite as many are predicting, and I don't think there's enough value in the betting odds to back them to do that.
Yeah, I think that's quite a shrewd decision. Brentford, a little bit of a bogey side for Manchester City in years gone by, but you still wouldn't be confident enough to be backing them to get the win either. And City, plenty short, as you detail there, Brad. Well, we have 2 late kickoffs to enjoy on Saturday, which is Aston Villa versus Everton at 5:30. And well, God, it just goes from bad to worse for Everton, doesn't it? 2 horrific losses to start the season, and then they managed to blow a 2-goal lead at home to Bournemouth, 2-0 up with 87 minutes on the clock. And not only did they manage not to win, they managed to lose it. And it just a little bit of resignment amongst those Everton fans behind the goal. You just come to expect it at the moment, the way things have gone for Everton over the last sort of 12 months or so. My dad's an Evertonian, and I think he would tell you it's been miserable for a bit longer than that, to be honest. But yeah, will they have anything to smile about this weekend? Well, I wouldn't be rushing to say yes. They've still got a lot of uncertainty going on in the background. A lot of narratives away from the pitch, I think, as well. John Textor continues to be linked with his takeover that seems to be rumbling on forever. The last season at Goodison Park narrative has dominated a lot of headlines as well, but ultimately they need to get things right on the pitch and quick, because they are being dragged into another relegation battle, and going into that new stadium in the Championship financially would be an absolute disaster for a club the size of Everton. So Sean Dyche needs to get things turned around quick. This is a tough old game to do it, because Villa have made a strong start, just as they did last season, of course, qualifying for the Champions League. They've had 2-1 away wins at West Ham and Leicester, and they were either side of a narrow 2-0 defeat at Arsenal, where they were still level at 0-0 for long periods of that game, and could have easily gone in front. An amazing double save from David Raya at 0-0. So I think Unai Emery will be very pleased with how his side has started the season. Traditionally, they're very strong at home, They enjoyed a record-breaking run at Villa Park in 2023. You might remember they won 15 straight home games in the Premier League. Remarkable. But ultimately, this feels like a game where Villa will be allowed to dominate most of the play. Everton will look to pose a threat on the break and at set pieces. And that was their plan at Tottenham, and it didn't go very well. They lost 4-0. And yeah, they were lucky to get nil that day. So Everton will have their work cut out to stay in this game. And the way I like to play this one is with their new signing, a man signed from Aston Villa in the summer, actually, Tim Irabunam, and he's made a really impressive start in what has been a turgid 3 games for Everton. He's looked a really good find. It looked like a deal that had only really gone ahead because of PSR rules, to be honest. Everton selling their youngsters, Villa selling their youngsters, and everybody just kind of loopholing their way around these rulings. But Irabunam, to be fair, has come into the midfield and impressed. Now, on his debut against Brighton, he put in a remarkable 9 tackles and 4 interceptions. That is the most by any player in a game this season so far. So he certainly likes to get stuck in. He's picked up yellow cards in his last 2 outings for the Toffees. And against his old club here, I just think all the recipe is in here for another yellow card for him. We know he likes a tackle. We know he likes a yellow card. Adding that he's going back to the club that he's come through the youth team at. His team are likely to be under pressure for large spells. I think 15-8 about Irabunam going in the book is a potentially great bet, maybe my bet of the weekend. And that price may get bigger as the week goes on, so do keep an eye out for it. And if you're backing him for the yellow card, it makes sense to just have a very, very tiny play on the red card, which is currently 28-1 with Bet365. But other bookies yet to price those things up. So please do have a look around before placing that bet if you do follow this weekend. Brad, we have an even later kickoff on Saturday. Bournemouth taking on Chelsea at 8 p.m. You're going to run us through this one.
Yeah, the home side Bournemouth have made a solid start to the season so far, Matt. 5 points from 9. They're unbeaten across their 3 matches too. Their most recent outing, of course, was that stunning 3-2 victory at Goodison Park you touched upon there, trailing by 2 goals to win. By 2 goals, with 3 minutes to go and going on to win is just incredible. I don't think anyone saw that coming. But that's Everton for you, like you touched upon there. They did lose Dominic Solanke in the summer, as we touched upon a couple of weeks ago, and replaced him with Porto striker Evan Nielsen, who's still looking for his first goal in a Bournemouth shirt. But they do remain a potent threat on the front foot, with likes of wingers Antoine Semenyo and Luis Sinistero are both on the score sheet in that Everton win, and they've already got a couple of goals to their name. They're facing a Chelsea side everyone is still trying to get a feel for. I think the match will be new manager Enzo Maresca's 4th league outing in charge of the side. It's been an okay start, 4 points from 9. Their one win came when they beat Wolves 6-2 away from home. Of course, they lost to Manchester City on the opening weekend 2-0 and also drew 1-1 with Crystal Palace last time out. Those 2 fixtures both came at home, but I'm not convinced by them at all. I think I've said this in previous episodes. Everything surrounding that club right now just screams chaos. There's talks of a potential rift between the club chairman, Todd Boehly, and the owners, Clearlake. Add to that the ridiculous amount of players on their books. I think it's not an overstatement to say it's hardly an ideal situation for Maresca to walk into. I said a few weeks ago it's going to be a rollercoaster season for Chelsea, much like it was for much of Mauricio Pochettino's first term in charge last year. Sorry if I can get my words out. I just can't see how you can expect any consistency when the manager still doesn't even know his best squad, never mind the starting 11. Add to that Bournemouth's positive start and an impressive performance versus Newcastle at the Vitality a few weeks back. They had plenty of positive spells. A late winner denied, of course, by VAR too. On any other day, they could have escaped there with 3 points. And so I'm going to back them to do that this weekend. I think there's plenty of value at 13-5, given the ongoing situation at Chelsea. I do not trust that Chelsea team at all. And I think this is a difficult place to go. Bournemouth got a very decent home record at the Vitality. So I'm going to back them to beat Chelsea this weekend at 13-5. Generally, like I said, that Chelsea side, I have no faith in it whatsoever, given everything that's going on the pitch, but also off it in the background. Yes, I'm going to go for a Bournemouth win this weekend to continue their good start to the season.
Yeah, Bournemouth to cause the upset there. I quite like that, to be honest. Big fan of Andoni Iraola, the work he's doing down there at Bournemouth. Last game for me then, what a game this is. North London derby on Sunday. And this fixture never really disappoints, does it, for the neutral? 8 of the last 10 derbies have produced over 2.5 goals, and 5 of the last 10 have offered up over 3.5 goals. So no reason to think this won't be the most entertaining fixture of the weekend, as well as the most important in the grand scheme of this year's title. Arsenal, unsurprisingly, have dominated recent affairs. They've won 5 of the last 7, although Spurs did take off a point off them at the Emirates last season, which in the grand scheme of things ended up being costly indeed for the Gunners. They dropped their first point of the season last weekend, as mentioned earlier, against Brighton. That was largely caused by Declan Rice's red card. But I think generally speaking, Arsenal have picked up where they left off last term, kind of been as we expected. They've been very encouraging in their play. They look solid at the back, not giving up many chances. And we all know about the wealth of attacking options that they have. So no reason to think they won't be up there again, despite having already dropped points. Tottenham will be frustrated to only have 4 points on the board. They thumped Everton at home, but they should have beaten Leicester as well on opening night, no doubt. Ended up drawing that game 1-1. And the bogey ground, St James's Park, where we predicted they might have a bad time at Newcastle, and once again slipping to defeat, and once again Alexander Isak causing them nightmares. No surprises there. Now, we're talking very early in the week here, but I have to flag it. Potentially a key element in this game is going to be the fitness of Martin Odegaard for Arsenal. He limped out of Norway's Nations League fixture last night. He's been pictured on crutches going back to England, so you'd have to consider him a massive doubt for this game. Now, that would be a blow at the best of times. But when you add in that Declan Rice is also suspended, Arsenal's midfield is going to have to undergo quite serious renovation. And I think losing one key player, they're well versed to cover, but losing 2, that's bound to have an impact, isn't it? So I couldn't be backing Arsenal to win this game, particularly when you add in the derby element, particularly when you add in the quality of the opposition in Tottenham, and Tottenham will be up for the fight and raising their game. However, I just don't see Arsenal losing here. They're very good. The key to them becoming title challengers in the last year or two has been their ability to still find a way to get a result even when the chips are down. They're a very reliable team, aren't they? Like, I don't see them going there and stinking the place out even without Rice and Odegaard. I think they'll give as good as they get, and Tottenham are susceptible to giving up chances. Both teams to score is very short, as you would expect. Overs on the goal lines, very short, as you would expect. So I'm just going to keep things really simple here. I think the draw 11-4 at BetVictor is a very fair price. I think it'll go off a bit shorter. And I think if you back the draw, you're going to be still in with a good chance going into the game's latter stages. I don't see either side running away with this due to the injuries for Arsenal. I think it's a close run thing. And the draw 11-4 will do for me. But I think it'll be an entertaining fixture either way. Brad, finish off this weekend slate with Wolves versus Newcastle.
Yeah, we'll start with the home side. Wolves, Matt, they remain winless from their first 3 matches after the 1-1 draw at Nottingham Forest last time out. I think there's a heap of pressure remains on manager Gary O'Neill, who also endured a difficult second half of last season. The nature of their 6-2 loss to Chelsea 3 weeks ago, I think it was, which is their only time playing at Molineux in the Premier League ahead of this weekend, I think was very worrying. Remarkably, though, they had a higher XG tally than their London counterparts. But Chelsea still finished with 6 goals to their name. Wolves are more than capable of hurting teams on the front foot, but they're going to need a much more clinical edge from the likes of Hwang Hee-chan, Matthias Cunha, and new forward Jurgen Strand-Larsen if they are to pick up more points. The latter, Larsen, did score his first goal against Chelsea. I'm sure they'll take confidence from that. Newcastle, meanwhile, made a solid start to the new campaign, taking 7 points from 9 so far. They were left frustrated at the end of the transfer window, where they were limited by PSR restrictions and also unable to bring in Mark Gay at centre-back, as you touched upon. But they will be buoyed by the return of another centre-back in Fabian Schär this weekend, who was available after his red card on the opening day versus Southampton. Remarkably, Newcastle haven't won in their last 7 matches at Molineux. 6 of those did end in the draw. But yeah, they've not won there since a 1-0 victory in February 2017, and that was in the Championship. I was tempted to back the draw at 11-4, given those recent results between the two, but I do think the extra clinical edge from Newcastle could be a defining factor here. They've averaged only 6.67 shots on goal so far this season, Newcastle, yet they boast a very impressive 20% conversion rate. And you compare that to Wolves, who have actually averaged 10 shots on goal so far, but they've managed a measly conversion rate of just 10%. And they create plenty of chances, but they've had trouble finishing them, leaving me hesitant to back them to win here, Wolves at 12-5. So therefore, I'm going to go the other way and back Newcastle to pick up their first win in 7 years at Molineux. That comes in at 23-20. Generally, you touched on Alexander Isak there, the likes of Anthony Gordon as well, and Bruno Guimaraes and Joelinton from midfield all remain an attacking threat. And I just think their ability to take chances compared to Wolves' inability to take chances will be the defining factor here. Matt's going to go with a Newcastle win at 23-20. That comes in generally across the board.
This one, thanks, Brad. Okay, Newcastle for Brad. Then let's just round up the best bets. Then we have managed to get through the games in under half an hour this week, so I'll bring our best bets up onto the screen now. No need for me to recap them, but just very quickly, Man United to win and both teams to score is 9-4. Palace win and under 3.5 goals at Betway. I think that is probably my favourite bet of the weekend, I would say, alongside Tim Iribinham to be booked for Everton against Aston Villa. But yeah, Brad, what would your best bet of the weekend be if I had to make you pick one?
I'd probably go for Brighton just because I think Ipswich are going to concede a lot of goals this season, and Brighton for me are going to be one of the teams to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the top 6. I know it's a very early shout given the way they've started this season, but let's look at some of the sides at the top of the Premier League have hardly been convincing, and they've been brilliant under Fabian Hersler so far. So yeah, I'd probably go for that one. 2.5 plus goals at 5-4.
Okay, I like it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that Premier League betting show. If you do, please give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear what you're backing this weekend in the comments below. Bear in mind, prices may have changed by the time you watch this. But yeah, and if you're new to the channel here on OddsNow and you like what we're doing, please do give us a subscribe. We've got plenty more preview content on the way. I'll be away for next week's Premier League betting show, but we have a very capable replacement lined up for me next week in the form of Connor Kane, who you may know from our sister channel, Darts Now. So Brad and Connor will be back next week, and I will see you again in the near future. Thanks for watching and see you soon.